Now, here, talk about a false flag, literally. For about a week, right-leaning establishment media, including Fox News, the New York Post, and Daily Mail, along with outlets like the Daily Caller and the Washington Examiner, ran with incendiary headlines about a physical attack on a Jewish student. As these outlets ignored and downplayed mass graves in Gaza, their headlines rang out, quote, Jewish Yale student stabbed in the eye. Peers joined the Nazi party. Cops at Yale arrest violent anti-Israel protesters after Jewish student journalist stabbed in the eye. Jewish student jabbed in eye with Palestinian flagpole while reporting on protest. Mob behavior, qualified Fox News. But after days of this coverage, days during which this incident was used to justify the mass arrest, suspension, and expulsion of students around the country, the truth has come out in the form of a video. Now, we weren't able to get permission to play the video here in time for this segment, but if you saw or get to see it, it was a blink and you'd miss it moment. As it turns out, the flagpole in question was a tiny handheld flag that apparently touched the victim's face as protesters walked by in a packed crowd. But look at how the anti-Palestinian movement rallied around this victim. Embracing a false victim narrative, Libs of TikTok Chaya Rachik tweeted on Monday, a Jewish student was stabbed in the eye at Yale and a bunch of terrorist sympathizers are now running Columbia. The 300,000 follower Twitter account run by the Stop Anti-Semitism group put a hit out on the flag bearer, asking folks to identify him and, quote, help secure his arrest. Enough is enough. Barry Weiss,
enough is enough.
Far
Go ahead
from
and cut
moments
that.
like these, gave.
I think her and Robbie get in a fight later in that clip, but we don't have time for that. We have we have a little bit more evidence to put on the record because we looked at this earlier, but we didn't read it, right? So I looked it up, and there's a whole section that's interesting. It's British support for Jewish restoration, and that's interesting. But I also found this, which is interesting. British projects for the restoration of Jews to Palestine. This is 1918, publications of the American Jewish Historical Society. So I'm going to look at that in a second. But I also found this, which I remember reading back in the day when I did this line of study. But it's fascinating that the timeline of Zionism goes back to 1561, at least from these references, right? And then by the time you get down past Baruch Spinoza and the Ashkenazis and the Ottomans, 1771, observations upon the prophecies relating to the restoration of the Jews. So that's interesting. There's a whole bunch more of these types of things. Foundation of the Palestine Association, 1805. Like, that's pretty early. I don't think they're including that in their timeline. I mean, this is, you know, there's a lot of interesting references that you get from here. Benjamin Disraeli's work with the Suez Canal, working with Lord Rothschild. There's Lord Shaftesbury, 1839. 3 years before the article that we cited, the state and the rebirth of the Jews, which included the suggestion for the Jews to return to Palestine to seize lands of Galilee and Judea, as well as the phrase, earth without people, people without a land. Have you guys heard that lately? But wait, there's more. 1840, Lord Shaftesbury presents a paper to the British Foreign Minister, Lord Palmerston, very famous, we talk about him all the time, recall of the Jews to their ancient land. Not Egypt and not Babylon, because the next one is more specific. Ottoman Empire has this land called Palestine, right? Palestine. They keep talking about it in the 1800s, but for some reason today in 2024, really, really smart people will tell you no such place ever existed. 1841. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on through the various instances. Like, so, you know, you don't have to be like super intellectually adept to say what's the timeline of this subject and read it and click the references and read those things and then get the books and get the documents, which, by the way, I think I have one more here for you.
Rich, we need to put you in the ring with Ben Shapiro, dude. That would be the ultimate.
I'm out of his weight class. Unfortunately, there is a thing about weight class and fighting. So I got to read this to you, though. This is from Napoleon Bonaparte, commander-in-chief of the armies of the French Republic in Africa and Asia, to the rightful heirs of Palestine. This is what's called a piece of history. Okay. Israelites, unique nation, whom in thousands of years, lust of conquest and tyranny have been able to be deprived of their ancestral lands, but not of name and national existence. Attentive and impartial observers of the destinies of nations, even though not endowed with the gift of seers like Isaiah and Joel, have long since also felt what these beautifully, with beautiful and uplifting faith, have foretold when they saw the approaching destruction of their kingdom and fatherland, and the ransomed Lord shall return and come to Zion with songs and everlasting joy upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. Now that's quoting Isaiah, going back to Zion, right? The point is, rightful heirs of Palestine, he says the Jews can go back there. This is from 1799, right? So we got something going back to the 1700s with this idea that most people think Theodor Herzl and Chaim Weizmann came up with this idea, and then it all just started in 1897, 1898, and then was aggrandized by the tiny mustache guy. But this article here, this is on mideastweb.org, on British Zionism, support for Jewish restoration in Britain, is also highly illustrative and does mention that that Napoleon piece, which is left out of a lot of timelines. I actually have a presentation of this variety that I'm preparing for the Red Pill Expo and G. Edward Griffin. So I don't want to spoil too much on, but I didn't show you any of the artifacts. I just told you where to find the history behind the artifacts that I'm going to demonstrate.
Very cool. It's awesome.
All right. So now that we have those examples on there, because I was also realizing when they put this bill in place, can we not talk about Israeli involvement with 9/11 anymore? Do we have to put all that on the record too before the deadline? Do we have an hourglass that's like dripping away like in John Wick 4? Isn't that where they took the hotel? Yeah, that's probably not the best idea. So we do have, we're running for time. Kurt's not here yet, right? All right, cool. I want to show you this last media block real quick, and then maybe we'll talk about the Bill Cooper clip with Kurt. So the first one's the NYPD. First off, shout out to Matt Orfalea. I didn't know there was so many ways to say his name, but that was a banger mashup of that situation. It saved us like 20 minutes of having the coverage. All those various angles.
She got stabbed in the eye 6 million times, man.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested,
in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.